introduce our speaker for the evening, and if he wants to hang out later after our business meeting, he can certainly do that and visit with you afterwards. Steve Smith served in the Arizona Senate for 8 years. And 2 years ago, in 2018, he was running for Congress in Congressional District 1, which is the far east part of the state. And he got aced out in the primary. So now he works as the state director for the Arizona State Director of the American Federation for Children. And he tells me that Betsy DeVos, before she became the National Director for Education, whatever, Secretary of Education, that this was her baby and she founded this whole program and stuff like that. So anyhow, so he is the Arizona director, and what they do is they work on promoting charter schools. And one thing that I wanted to tell you that I really want to hear about is the difference between district charter schools and private charter schools versus private schools. Okay? So anyhow, this is Steve Smith.
And thank you, Shirley. Yes?
Yes.
Well, good evening, everybody. I always start off by saying, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad with it. Amen. And hey, whenever we can gather like this, it's a great day of freedom in our country. So thank you. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, as Shirley said, I'm Steve Smith, not that Steve Smith that you just all talked about. There's more than one of us, I guess. But yeah, you know, I had the honor of serving in the Senate. I live in the city of Maricopa, which is in Pinal County. And I first ran for the state legislature in 2010. Yep. And I was a guy, just so you know my background, always politically active, very conservative, never ran for nothing ever in my life. And I was looking through, I said, you know, I want to run for something. And I was looking at all the seats, and I said, oh, well, nobody's running in this race over here, the Senate race. I'll just run there. And had I known any better, well, nobody ran there because the Democrat that held that seat, their family had held it for about 30 years, and they never lost. And I said, oh, oops. Well, we'll beat them anyways. And so what did I know about it? And we ran, and we beat their butt. And yeah. And so I became one of the youngest senators in Arizona history, and the first Republican from that district since Arizona was founded, since statehood, about 100 years earlier. And I say that because I am still and was, like all of you, just politically active in my own way, cared about politics, always thought, well, who the heck is there? Somebody can do better than them. But I didn't know a thing about running for office. I said, well, somebody's got to do it, let's do it. And prayed about it, and that's where God put us. And I was fortunate enough to serve with great people like Miss Brenda Barton and your Senator Sylvia Allen and so many others. And so, and I just finished this past January. And so upon finishing in January, yes, as Shirley said, I'm with an organization now called American Federation for Children. Of course, as she just mentioned, Betsy DeVos, our U.S. Secretary that Trump picked, this was her group, and I kind of run that. And before I get into that, the neat thing that I was able to do in the Senate, especially with Brenda's help and so many others, my big issue was immigration, was the border, you know, and pro-life issues and things like that. And so we were able to actually start building a border fence 7 years before Donald Trump wanted to build the border fence, which was really cool. We were able to do a lot of great things in Arizona. And I even wrote the bill to ban sanctuary cities in Arizona. All these things that are coming up now, which it's so refreshing to have more people on our side and the public on our side, I think, for a lot of these issues. And now we just got to make sure we get them over the finish line year after year after year. But it was a fantastic experience. It was a great time, and we were able to get a lot of stuff done in the Senate. When I got there, we were billions in debt, and we left with a surplus. And again, that's from work with Brenda and so many others. Team effort, team sport. But here we are today. So, what the heck is American Federation for Children, and why do we care? And who's that baby crying? Is that just me?
No, there is one.
Now, we have 5 kids at home, so I always hear babies crying, but I think I actually hear a baby crying. So, well, I'll just talk louder. And yes, and thank you, Shirley, because my wife is going to kill me if I'm past 10 o'clock tonight, so I got to go. But American Federation for Children is the nation's largest school choice advocacy group, okay? And whenever I talk with people, they always say, yeah, I think I like school choice, but I don't really know what school choice means. I see it everywhere. I see it on candidates in literature. I hear Trump talking about it, but what the heck is school choice? And quite simply, school choice, the whole notion of it is parents have full, complete control over where their child should go to school. That's what it means, okay? That's what it means. Now, and you might say, well, duh, I mean, isn't that the way it is now? No, it is not. No, it is not. The way typically the education system works around our country, and I was fortunate enough, with Brenda's help again, to write a lot of the school choice bills in Arizona. We were first in the nation in writing some of this stuff that many other states have duplicated since. But most states, when you move, and you move into your house, you type in your address, and it's going to spit out, that's the school that your kids are going to go to. Doesn't matter if it's a good school, bad school, somewhere in the middle, where you live, determine where you're going to go to school. And that's just, I don't think, the very best way to decide what school fits my kid. Ronald Reagan talked about this 35 years ago, about this is a bad system the way it is. And so what Arizona did, our first year in, was we wrote these things that are called Empowerment Scholarship Accounts, ESAs, the first of its kind in the country, that said all of our tax money that we pay, sales tax, property tax, income tax, all the money that goes to our state government goes in big buckets, and every kid in Arizona in K-12, there's 1.1 million K-12 students in our system in Arizona. They all get a big backpack full of money. You take that pot of money, you divide it up by all the kids, and that's what's called your per pupil funding. Have you ever heard of that? Per pupil funding. Every kid gets about 12 grand a year. Okay? That's state, federal, local dollars. That's all monies, and that's about how much every kid on average in Arizona gets. Schools are like businesses. The more customers, the more students, the more money. Okay? And so what we said was, well, all these buckets of money here, why don't we let the parent of the kid be able to reach back in the bucket of their tax money, pull out their money if they don't want to go to that school over there, and they can walk it right over here to any school they want, including private schools. So if you want to go to a Christian school, Catholic school, this school, online school, home school, whatever it is that y'all want to do, what a novel concept. You can take your money back out of the bucket and go pay tuition, books, uniforms, whatever you want with it. Okay? After all, it's your money. And that's the bill that we introduced, and that's the bill, that's the idea that many other states have since copied. And we've done a lot of other school choice programs too. But that's kind of, in effect, what it is and what it means. Ted Cruz right now is running the national tax credit bill. So all of our tax liabilities that we owe the IRS at the end of the year, you can now instead divert to the school of your choice, dollar for dollar. Well, that's his bill. It hasn't passed yet. And so if you owe X amount of money to the IRS, you can say, federal government, I don't want you to have my money. I want these particular schools to have my tax money. And then they can take that money, and all the kids who couldn't go to that school, they can pay their scholarships. Does that make sense? So this is a big state push and a big federal push about this idea of school choice. Your money going to work for where you want it to go to. As Shirley was saying, charter schools are a big part of school choice. Now, charter schools, who thinks charter schools are public schools or are they private schools? Who thinks they're public schools? Who thinks charter schools are private schools? Charter schools are public schools, okay? And a lot of people think they're private schools, like, I've got to pay tuition to go. You do not. If you're enrolled at Payson Elementary and you want your kid to go to XYZ charter, you just simply move your kid over there and their money automatically follows them. These programs, the school choice programs, are more geared towards private school, towards online and things like that. But the whole thing about going where you want to go is school choice. So charter schools, God bless you, are still part of this whole idea called school choice. And at the end of the day, it's all rooted in competition. So guess who hates school choice?
Teachers union.
Teachers union, which means, i.e., Democrat lawmakers. Okay? Because why do they hate it? Well, their funding source comes from the teachers union. Because the teachers union, right, wants to keep all their kids in their district schools, in their public schools. Because every kid that leaves, there's another backpack money leaving that school. Less kids, less money. Well, I got to keep my monopoly. You can't have any of my kids. My kids, they're mine. No, they're not. I thought this was all about, right, doing the best thing for the kids. We always hear, do it for the kids. What about the kids? Well, what if their best interest is going to a school over there that's smaller, that's specialized, that deals with this, or whatever it is? Why can't the parent decide it? Why do they have to go here? And they don't. But guess who hates it? Those people. But Democrats don't hate it. Democrat voters don't hate it. Democrat politicians hate it, because Democrat voters don't get kickbacks from the teachers union. And we've run national polls in all 50 states. Every demographic polled supports this idea called school choice. Even Democrat voters, 56% of Democrats support school choice. You know what the largest demographic is that supports school choice? Hispanics. 73% support this idea of school choice. Republicans, white, black, millennials, you name it, all of them support it, except Democrat politicians, because their bread is buttered by the unions. So our job is kind of, well, taking on the union in all of our states, as well as our superintendent, our newly elected superintendent in Arizona. Her name is Kathy Hoffman. She's a Democrat, and she does not like these school choice programs. So we are trying to constantly let the public be aware that these exist, and we're trying to get a good legislature, a good citizen group understanding what this is all about to promote it, because after all, it is to help our kids. But that's what we do, and the reason I just thought maybe y'all should want to care about this if you didn't know about it, I'm going to leave these here tonight if that's okay. This is a really, really, really simple little flyer. It's got a big name and number at the bottom right here of a lady named Kathy. If you have anybody you know that's in the K-12 system in Arizona, I don't care if you have nieces, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandkids, whoever, if they're going to school, take a picture of this and text it to them. Take a picture of this and post it on your Facebook account or email it to people and just say, did you know programs exist that your kid could go to private school for free? They could do other things. Now, not unfortunately, every kid can do it because the program is only for certain demographics and groups and people in certain situations. We're trying to expand it. But the idea is if you know any kid or family, please share that with them because they have the right to go where they think is best for them. Okay? So that's kind of what we do. And I have no idea if you want me to answer any questions, but if anybody's got questions about education, anything, this program, Brenda's and our time in the legislature, state, local, whatever, I'll be happy to answer it, but I at least just want to let you all know that's what we're doing, that's what the fight is. President Trump, out of anybody in the country he could have picked to be his U.S. Education Secretary, he picked Betsy DeVos. Why? This is her number one issue. Now it's Trump's number one issue in education. This is a good, conservative thing, and I'll do one more thing about this whole competition idea. Remember, when kids exit schools, well, this school now has to adjust. And you'll hear, oh, well, this isn't fair to our district schools because they're losing kids now. Well, what if the school goes under, or what if this? And it's like, my kids aren't here to prop up your system, okay? If my family likes this school, all my kids go to public school. If they like this school because I think you have a good product, we're going to keep going there. But guess what? If you don't have a good product, I ain't going there. It's like McDonald's. If they start serving crappy hamburgers, you're going to go to Burger King. And McDonald's doesn't sit there and go, well, wait a minute. I either got to change my recipe, have better customer service, or I got to close my doors. Competition, what a novel concept. And if you have it in education, your child, your grandchild, whomever, is going to benefit from it the most. And it's the best thing you can do for your kid. And the better our schools, the better our kids are going to do. Last thing about charter schools, because people say, are charter schools really better than just regular district schools? If you were to take every charter school in the state of Arizona and make them their own state, so now that they're the 51st state, yeah, we would be number 2 in the nation in education outcomes. Test scores, things like that. Just the Arizona charter kids. Now, I think that's pretty impressive, okay? So that does that mean the teachers are smarter? No. What does that mean? That means the parents are typically more involved. Now, my wife was a teacher, brother, sister, family of teachers. And the first thing they'll tell you is, if you want your kid to learn better, your parents got to get involved in what they're doing. Understand their homework, go to school with them, know who the teacher is, talk to their principal. You just got to get involved. Well, if you're a parent that cares enough about your kid and where they go to school, you're probably going to say, okay, teacher, let me see this homework. Okay, you're just going to be more involved as a parent. Well, what does that do? That makes your kid better. And all of this is happening in Arizona right now, which is really, really cool. So, anyhow, that's all I got.
Steve, let me tell you the rules for Q&A.
Tell me.
And for people who are just now here. We have 2 mics. Charlie's got one on that side of the room. I have one on this side of the room. You raise your hand, you get the mic. You don't ask a question unless you have the mic. And keep your questions, pretty succinct. Don't go back to the Wright brothers with your commentary before you ever get to your question, like some people are known to do. And so anyhow, someone over here had their hand up first. Okay, we're going to come over here first. And this is Dayton.
I'm Dayton.
All right.
Sorry. My youngest son runs a Montessori school. They cost more money than typical. So what is the situation there if kids in public school want to go to Montessori school?
Yeah. Do you know at ballpark what their tuition is to attend?
About $7,000 a year.
Yeah. So it's any school that charges basically tuition. The ESA amount right now, and here's the really cool thing about this ESA program. So all the money that would go to that kid in that district school, 90% of it comes out and goes to the parent, literally on a debit card. So they can walk into that Montessori school and go, how much is tuition? Swipe and pay, swipe and pay, swipe and pay. The ESA amount today is about $6,800 a student. But here's the cool thing. That's 90% of what they would have got. So you're actually educating kids for less money because 10% stays behind. Well, that's pretty good. So now let me see this. The state government saves money. They save 10% per kid. The district school that lost a kid has one less kid to educate at least, so smaller class sizes. But now the new school has new kids who are able to afford the tuition that ordinarily could have never, in most cases, afford $7,000 a year for their kid. Well, now they can. And that's why these programs are really cool. And it's you're doing it at less money than what it takes to educate, a typical kid.
Okay, Charlie, do you have a question on that side? Okay, then Bill had next here.
You may call me just plain Bill.
Okay, use the mic.
I have a comment and a question. The comment is, did Betsy DeVos not do badly for ladies selling soap? Anyway, what do you think of Red for Dead? Red for Dead, please. It's Red for Dead.
Yeah, the Red for Ed movement is, and Brenda was there too. It was an impressive show of force at the Capitol. I'll give them that. I was roundly booed by them the night of the bill that was passed. And I'll divulge with a little story. Yeah, I'm sure Brenda was too. But here's what Red for Ed and people told me about. This goes back to the 20% teacher pay raise. Remember this?
Yeah.
A couple years ago. We want 20%. We want a pay raise. And so I'm one of those loudmouths at the Capitol in the Senate who would always stand up on one of these microphones and tell people how I saw it, because not enough people stood up and said it. And I didn't want the media only getting one side of the story. And I said, all right, well then I guess I'm the one that's chosen to stand up. So the big night that they were all down there. The gallery was packed with red shirts, and then the overflows downstairs, then everything outside. And everything was on they could hear. So they would cheer, they'd boo. Well, every time I'd stand up, I'd get booed. Because I frankly just told the way I saw it. And the way I saw it, which I think will answer your question, was I read my emails to the audience, to the Senate. And I said, I got an email in February from a lot of teachers that said, darn it, we deserve a pay raise. And we've worked very long, very hard, and I didn't disagree. And it says, we, the teachers, are very underappreciated, da-da-da-da-da. Guess what? Well, Governor Doug Ducey walked out there and said, you got it. And he gave it to him. And that's the email that I read in February. But I said, but do you know what the email started looking like in May? It wasn't the teachers deserve 20%. Now it's everybody. The janitors, the bus drivers, the principals, the superintendents. And I said, well, wait a minute. That's not what Red for Ed was founded on. Red for Ed was for teacher pay. And the governor stood up and said, you got it. And once he said, you got it, you thought the reaction would have been, oh my gosh, thank you. But instead, many of their reaction was, oh, well, now I've got to move the goalpost over here now. I got this, but now I want this, and now I want this, and now I want this. And oh, by the way, in order to fund how I want to get paid, I want you to raise taxes. They were telling the legislature how they wanted it to be funded. So rather than being fiscally proper and conservative, say, well, wait a minute, let's see if we've got money to pay for it. I'm like, why do you care where the money comes from? You got the money, but you want us to raise taxes to get it? And so my point was, and I'd read those emails, and I'd say, this is how the movement started, but here's where the movement is at. And that's why many of them got mad at me and would boo me when I would when I would talk. Because I said, well, that's the truth. That's what it was. And so for me, that movement, many of the people in it, I think you had a lot of good teachers that were part of it that just wanted their fair earnings. But I think, obviously, there was a big section of it that took it over and tried to have more political agendas. So.
No, not until everybody else. So we've got, okay, that side room, Don, and then we'll get back to Phyllis, and then Kim, and then you. I'm following all you. As best I can. Go ahead, Don.
Have you ever heard of David Burton from Wall Builders?
I know of Wall Builders. David Burton.
Barton.
Oh, David Barton, the author.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
I thought you said Burton, so I didn't know Burton. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have some
Okay.
of his books.
So,
Good.
good. Okay, Mrs. Phyllis.
Okay, I just have a small comment. It's my understanding that the governor of Florida was elected because 53% of minority people came out for the school choice and voted for him. They were Democrats.
You are one smart political cookie. Look at you knowing your Florida politics. You're right. You're right. And our organization, AFC, was pivotal in Florida helping that movement. You're 100% right.
I have a question. This is just a rumor. There's someone in our family that is a substitute teacher at a special ed school. And she was one of those that went down and supported the Red for Ed when it first started out because she bought into it. Then later on, several months later, what she had heard was some of the districts, the more well-heeled districts, they got their 20% raise. Some of the other districts, they did not. They only got a 5% raise or a 10% raise. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, and Brenda can tell you this too. Here's the unfortunate part. So teachers wanted 20%, we gave it to them. Took two and a half years, so we did 5%, 5%, 10%. And now, as of right now, they got it. But the state legislature, the only thing we could do was send the money to the school boards. The school board's job is to take the money and give it to the teachers. That's the problem. Because when we wrote that 20 for 20 bill, the state of Arizona was being sued at the time. And that language was written in such a way to settle the lawsuit and to give the teachers to pay. We begged to put in that legislation that all this 20% must only go to teachers and to teachers only. But guess what? The other side wouldn't adhere to that. And you would think, well, why not? I thought they were supposed to back the teachers. That they were going to walk away from the deal, which they had a co-sign because it was a settlement for a lawsuit. So they stripped that out. So all we could write, Brenda and I and Sylvia and others, was said, this money is purposed for teacher pay raise. We really want it to go there, but we can't make it go there. But the whole darn state knew about it because it was red for ed in 2020. So if your teachers, any of them, did not get at least 20%, it is right back to the school board because they decided. But here's the kicker. The average teacher pay in Arizona at the time was $48,000 a year. Now I know a lot of teachers in Payson probably don't make that, and let's say they make 38. Well, that means obviously teachers in Scottsdale might make 58, but the point is that averaged to about 48. The 20% pay raise we gave them was based off of the 48 grand. Let's just call it 50 for math. So let's say the average teacher makes 50. We effectively gave every teacher a $10,000 raise, or 20% of 50 grand. My point is, if you're a teacher making 30 grand, 10% to you is a 30% pay raise, not 20. Does that make sense? It's a third of your salary, it's a 33% pay raise. So if you are in an area of the state where your teachers were making less than 48%, you at minimum should have got a 20% pay raise if your school board did their job. And if they didn't, you need to walk right into that school board and go, hey, what's up? I know the state sent you the money. I know y'all got it. Why didn't you give the teachers your 20%? And they'll go, oh, well, we had to, fix the roof. Or we had to, fix our broken school buses. And we only give them 8% raise. But do you know what I say to that? That was also in the budget that year? We had a little other bucket of money called additional assistance for hundreds of millions of dollars a year to the schools to pay for broken roofs, broken school buses. So if any school board wants to say, oh, we didn't get enough, no, you did, okay? And you owe it to the teachers. And if they're not, it's on them. But we did everything legally we could do and get it to the school board. School board's like the middleman. They now have to cut the checks to the teachers. And if they don't, I'd vote their butts out of office.
Okay, do you have somebody over there? Okay.
This is Bob.
Spelled the same backwards and frontwards. Steve, thanks for coming out. I do appreciate it. This is my first Tea Party meeting, even though I've been a Tea Party member since it started, I believe. Question.
Hold the mic up.
Question. Governor Ducey. We elect people to positions of responsibility that are so-called, I'm not going to say so-called, that are conservatives, I think. And he caves in to teachers' unions for contracts that's going to cost the state of Arizona, I'm going to guess, $1 billion. I don't know what the actual numbers are and how it's budgeted. We've got to quit electing Republicans and conservatives who really are not Republicans and conservatives. That's my belief. And also look, Governor Ducey appointing a senator that lost an election and put a loser in another position of responsibility. I don't know anything about the governor. I hope I can get some enlightenment from you folks. Thank you.
I think for the 20 for 20 for Governor Ducey, it was a no-win situation. At least that's how it came down to us. Apparently the polling was of such high numbers that the people of Arizona wanted this pay raise. And it's almost like if you didn't, does he get unelected again? Do you lose the state legislature? Now remember, on the heels of that election, the state legislature lost 5 seats in the House of Representatives. You have 60 House of Representative members in Arizona. Of course, Brenda and Bob, and now you have Walt Blackman. It takes 31 to pass a bill, obviously, right? You know how many Republican representatives you have right now in the state legislature?
31.
31. You know how many senators you have? We have 30 senators in Arizona. You need 15 to pass a bill. How many senators do we have in that republic? 17. You literally have no room for error. And if you lose one more seat, that's why this district is pivotal with Walt Blackman, and now he's got the new running mate, I think that's running with him,
John Celine.
Celine. If he loses and you go to a 30-30 house, whatever you care about is gone. And I don't care if it's border security, low taxes, less government, you have better health care, it's all gone. Because if you have a split legislature, it's like what Trump is doing. If he can't keep the Senate, he ain't going to get any more good Supreme Court kicks. It's just that simple. So everything is politics, is my point. And so I think when the governor looked at it, it was, I'm darned if I do, I'm darned if I don't. But at least what the governor did, he didn't raise taxes to go find that money. Our economy was, and still is, very good. And so he just said, you know what? We haven't given teachers pay raises in a long time. I'm just going to move our economic development money over here, and boom, 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 done. Now, of course, a lot of people maybe think there's a better way to spend that money or not to cave in and things like that. But again, I think the governor was in a very, very, very tough spot. And if the legislature wasn't there for it as well, I think you could have seen a Democrat-controlled legislature, which is far worse than whatever heartburn you may or may not have over the 20% pay raise, because everything is gone then, all of it. And so everything's politics. No.
Okay, we have Frank here. Tom.
Hello, sir. I've got a question about the charter schools. When a group of children, let's say a whole bunch want to go to one particular school, are they tested to get in there? Is there a waiting list put on them if there's too many kids? How does that work?
Yeah, it totally depends on the charter school. So some of them will have waiting lists, and they'll usually run a lottery system for the kids that want to get in. From my experience, most of them do not. And you just literally transfer your paperwork over. There's no entrance, there's no exam, or certainly none of the charter schools that I know. Can some do it? Possibly. But typically, charter, you're going from a public school to a public school. Arizona, we have what's called open enrollment in Arizona. So remember how I talked about your zip code before? Typically, across the nation, wherever you live, you're going there, and that's it. In Arizona, several years ago, we said, no, we're going to institute what's called open enrollment. You can go to any public school you want, anywhere in Arizona. You want to drive 3 hours to go to that public school? You can go there. You want to go here, here, here? You can go to any one that you want. And now it's just a matter of taking that bucket of money that you got and going from public to public to public to public. And what we've done in the school choice movement was allow that to happen, but then allow that to expand to privates as well. So, no, charter schools are typically going to be the same entrance that you find at any school. Yeah.
Can you have somebody over there, Charlie? Okay. Bill is getting his money out, so then he has another question.
I am not pro-union, although I belonged to one when I was in a band, a rock and roll band, drumming up something else then. Anyway, the thing that concerns me most about strikes is what they call them when they quit working.
Right.
Anyway, if it's a furniture sales place, not a big deal. But when they're teaching children, and they're not going to school that day, and the kids don't get educated that day, that's a concern for me. Would you comment, please, on teachers who choose to not work while they're striking for higher wages? Because that's going to happen in this country. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, it's illegal in Arizona to do it, but they did it. And it's illegal to do it in Arizona, mind you, but they did it. But you're exactly right. And part of what I was saying that week as well, as probably was Brenda and many others, is saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. The red for ed, the descending on the Capitol, all the red shirts, the 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people whoever showed up, that came after Governor Ducey said, I'm going to give you your 20%. Governor Ducey went out on TV and said, you got it. Give me a couple days. I got to get it in the budget. You've got it. You've got my word. We then, in the Senate Appropriations Committee, I was the chairman of the military committee, and we even talked about it in my committee a little bit, I think. But in the Senate Appropriation Committee, we passed it with it in there. Then after all that, then they come down and strike and protest, and all of us are sitting there going, well, wait a minute, you're protesting over something you got. Why are you here and not there. And so, yeah, it made many people upset, especially since they had already had it. And when the governor publicly says, you've got it, and it's in the budget, and the Senate passes that budget, you know. But you know what we kept hearing the whole process, even after we passed it? And by the way, most Democrats voted against that budget. Yeah, we gave them everything that was told that they wanted. But most people started saying, oh, it's a bluff, they're not going to give them the money. It's like, well, it's right there. It's in, like, here it is, but for 2 years straight they said it's a bluff, the governor lied, they're not going to get the money. Well, of course they did. Of course they got their money, so it was interesting times.
Okay, we've got Janet.
I was just wondering, are the scores for the children for education as low, and are the teacher's salary as low as the media likes to tout Arizona being like at the bottom of the list on both of
Yeah,
those?
no, they're not. Matter of fact, our testing scores just were recently published, and Arizona is second in the nation in a lot of the gains from that we're seeing. It's unbelievable, and especially minority students. And so our education gains have been tremendous. This is the other thing that I got booed about a lot, because we talked about funding for education. All we kept hearing was Arizona's 49th in the nation in funding. We don't care about education. Republicans don't care about education, and they don't put any money in. Well, as it sits today, I think the number's up 54% of the Arizona budget goes to education. So it's kind of hard to say that you don't care about something when more than half of everything you got goes to that thing. But then I would remind people, because people would say, and they did it during our debate when I had this, they would say, yeah, but Arizona ranks 49th in the amount of money going to education. And I said, well, you can't compare dollar to dollar to states. Obviously, California's got more money than Arizona, and so does Texas, and so does New York, and so does Chicago, and so does Florida. I said, you have to look at percentage. It's almost like when you tithe at church. You know, I don't care if you threw in $100 in the pot. Well, if you're $1 million and $100 don't mean a whole lot. If you're getting by, $100 means a whole lot. It's percentages of what you got. And I said on the floor in front of everybody, I said, if you look at what the percentage that Arizona spends on education, we ain't 49th, and we ain't 40th. We're not 30th, we're not 20th. We were 12th. Wow. And I said, but wait a minute. That doesn't even count Prop 123. That adds another $1 billion, one with a B, billion per year into the education system. And I said, when you factor in that, now you're top 10. And that was before we did the 20 for 20, but $4 billion in. So now when you really add up the numbers, the way that they're calculated properly, I think you're top 10. Teacher pay, same thing. Now we're about top third. I mean, we're not number one, but now teacher pay is significantly increased, where it's, you know, in the top half, top third nationwide. So,
like you say, student population for Arizona versus student population for
Million
Indiana,
kids.
New York, California.
yeah. But that's what many will do. Well, you guys only pay X amount of billion per year, and you're less. Well, no, you can't do that unless you all got the same amount of money. But once you actually, you know, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, here's Larry. Oh, excuse me.
How do private schools lace into this whole thing? Can you touch on that?
So private schools are, you know, privately funded unless you're using programs like this, where you can take your public school money and pay your private school tuition. Outside of that, you're just coming out of pocket. And this is what Ronald Reagan talked about in the 80s. He said, you're double taxed that way. If you do the same model that we're doing today, we're all taxed now. Property, sales tax, income, all of our money is leaving our pockets and going to the government bucket. But now if I wanted to send my kid to private school, Montessori school, I got to reach right back into my pocket again and pull out more money for education, even though it was already taken from me the first time. So because I didn't choose to go to the school that I was zoned to, that all my money went to, I got to pay twice. And that's what Reagan was talking about 30 years ago, saying, well, that's double, you're paying twice. No, let me reach back in the bucket that already took my money and let me spend it where I want to spend it. And if I want to spend it here, I'll spend it here. If I don't, I'm going to spend it wherever I want. So private schools, they're typically on their own, but these programs are allowing parents to reach back into their bucket and pay for private education as well. So I don't know if that helps, but then we have other programs in 10 seconds. Other programs we started, if your kid doesn't qualify for one of these, you have what's called an STO, a school tuition organization, that says we as Arizonans can do a dollar for dollar tax credit in what you owe in your Arizona income tax. And you can do, I think it's $800 per married couple, you can send $800 to a school of your choice, Payson, Christian, whatever, elementary. And then now you don't pay the money to Arizona, you pay it directly to the school. And then the school now takes all the money in their own bucket, and all the kids that want to go to that school but can't afford it, they can pass out scholarships with that money. So you as private citizens can use your money either in a form like this or right through an STO program to help kids go to those schools too.
Where do homeschools fit in?
Sorry? Homeschools, same thing. Homeschools, yep, you can do your own homeschool curriculum, or you can run it through an ESA program as well and get the amount of money that you'd be getting and run your homeschool program as well. And the neat thing is you can pay for a homeschool, your online training, you can pay for textbooks and whatever you want. If you have like therapies or tutors, or if you want your kid to practice with this particular expertise in math, or this tutor over here, you can pay the money to pay those education experts. You can do all that through that. You're basically harnessing your tax dollars and spending them how you want.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. Oh.
I was just saying, does it include private Christian schools?
Absolutely.
Private Christian schools?
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Also on the private Christian school, when I had a lot of money to give, there was a particular student that was at our church, and they could not afford the whole $6,000 or whatever the tuition was. So they asked a bunch of people, and I donated $100, so did a bunch of other people, for that specific child to be able to go to that school. So we paid part of her tuition.
And you can do that through what you owe the state of Arizona in your income taxes.
Yeah, take a
And
tax
so,
break.
so yeah, it's just a tax break. If you owe the state $500, now you only owe them $400. You know what I mean? You just send 100 here, 400 there. So it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah. Okay, this is Harvey.
Hi, I'm Harvey. I was just following up a question that she asked before about the rankings. You were talking about how much money, 54% of the budget is education. Where do our students rank in the 50 states as far as scores?
Yeah. So it depends on what grade you're looking at and on what
Just
metrics
kind
you're
of
looking
an
at.
average.
Yeah, so they do testing at 3rd grade and 8th grade. Our 8th grade and 3rd grade math and reading scores, like I said, are top 5 in the most recent NAEP scores. That's the national assessment, scores that comes out. And so that's very promising. Our minority population is doing very, very well as well. I think if you were to do the whole conglomerate of Arizona, try to rank them, considering all the programs, again, top 3rd, top half, it's hard to put just over 1 on it. There's absolutely room for improvement, and don't get me wrong, even if you're number 1, well, what do they say? The U.S. is like 16th in the world in education anyways, so even if you're number 1, you're still way behind technically some of the rest of the world. But I think a big thing that led to that was that ranking, that our increased school scores was exiting as much as we can from Common Core as well. There's 2 main factors, Common Core and school choice. And the more choice that parents have to tailor make that education, well, the kid is probably naturally going to do better. So school choice is part of that, those increased scores. But I think Common Core being, it's not completely gone, but kind of gone, okay? And I always say Common Core is the education as Obamacare was the healthcare. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all. Your kid and my kid maybe don't learn the same. Your health problems and mine aren't the same. You can't have one program. You have to have people have programs that fit their individual need. And you're going to pick your health program based on your needs. I want my kids to have a school program based on their needs, and that's why I think that's why you've seen those gains.
Okay, Charlie has a question.
Yeah, I got a real quick one. If I remember right, I saw in the paper how the schools ranked nationally, and I think Arizona had like 5 charter schools in the top 10. Is that correct?
It is. So the top high schools in the United States, 5 of the top 6, 5 of the top 7 are all right in Arizona. Is that amazing? And that includes number 1. I think we were number 1, 2, 3, and like 6 or whatever it was. But 5 of the top 7, including the top 2 or 3, are all right here in Arizona. Those are charter schools, okay? But number 1 in the nation, and for those scores, I think that was U.S. News and World Report, those were, God bless you, graduation rate, test scores, all that kind of stuff. So they factored in a lot of different variables as well. But thank you for bringing that up. That's, I think 5 of the top 7 in the nation right here in Arizona. That's pretty impressive.
Number 8 too up there or something like
Yep.
that. But yeah, we really
Yep.
captured the top 10.
Yep, and that was, I think, at least 2 years in a row as well.
Mr. Steve.
Okay.
Yes.
While Glenn is waiting, just a second, while we're on this, I served on the school board for 5.5 years. And one of the things that helped the absolute most was we ended up getting a reading specialist that worked with the 5 elementary English, with the reading teachers at Payson Elementary School, and then also at Julia Randall. So it's kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade at Payson Elementary, and then 3rd through 5th. And they've started teaching phonics again. What a concept, because the Arizona Constitution says you will train up these children to read by phonics, and they were not using phonics. So that was one thing. And the other thing is, when you're looking at the percentage of the money that's in the budget and how much money, we're so low, our cost of living in Arizona is so much less than many, many states. And so if you factor that in, these teachers are getting more bang for the buck because they can rent or buy or purchase a home and spend on food and all that. Now, Arizona, Payson's cost of living is a little bit more expensive than down in Mesa and Chandler and Gilbert and Phoenix. But still, overall, the cost of living is so much less here than when you're trying to compare to states that have a lot higher cost of living. So go ahead, Glenn.
I was going to say what Charles said. My granddaughter, Christy Estevas, was a top student in the nation, and she came from one of those charter schools, and I believe she goes to school with Sylvia Allen's children or grandchildren, but that's correct.
Well, and Shirley, if I can, along those, and that's great. I love hearing stories like that. Along what you were saying too, a big thing that we kept hearing in the legislature, and Brenda helped with this one as well, was that our kids weren't being taught things that I think most people think they should know.
They should know.
Especially about American history.
Right.
And so we did the civics bill a few years ago that said if you are an immigrant coming to the United States and you apply for your immigration visa, right, you have to pass a United States civics test. Right. It's 100 questions about American history. Questions like, who's the current president? Who was our first president? But then, what are the 3 branches of government? And what is this? And what is this? And what, just stuff that you hope people know. And we said, well, wait a minute. If new people move into our country have to know this stuff, why in the heck are we not teaching or making our kids in K-12? So we ran a bill that said, to graduate high school in Arizona, you must pass the same test that everybody else has to pass if they want to come here. So now, at least on a very small level, we are hopefully having kids learn about their country, their founding, what this country stands for, all those kind of things that, frankly, just was never mandated before. And so now it is. And so again, on some happy ending note, at least we have that. But the curriculum, as somebody asked about the curriculum too, the curriculum can be a nightmare. And look no further than Tucson, the TUSD. I'll never forget a few years ago when they had those ethnic study groups. That's when, communist light materials were being disseminated to kids. There were stories that pictures of Benjamin Franklin were being taken down and replaced with Che Guevara. And it's like, this is happening in our own state. And so it can really get away from you if you're not vigilant. And so those of you that don't see on the school board, and thank you for serving on the school board is a vital, obviously, layer of government. And I know it's one of those forgotten ones. But I think you need to show up, if you can, and say, what's our curriculum? Where's our teachers 20%, right? And keep an eye on them and treat them like every elected official. Vote their butts out if they can't do their job.
Okay, here's Bob again.
Mr. Steve, what is the status of trade schools? Not all high school graduates need to go to the University of Arizona.
Yeah. Great question. And that was the last thing I worked on in the Senate last year was, and I'm one of those guys that said it too, I said, college ain't for everybody. And you go for 4 or 5 years, you come out 40, 50 grand in debt, and you try to get a job making 40 grand a year. Do you know what the starting average pay for an electrician is today in Arizona, year one?
75,000.
50 grand a year. Year 2 or 3, you're about 70. Plumber, high 40s. And all you need to do is go to a trade school for a few months and get your electrician's license. And so what I started doing was I started the trade program, and I wrote a bill around it, and I said, I want more of our people knowing that these trade programs exist. I found a federal grant that was able to come down and pay for a lot of these places to open up and do these kind of things. And I said, so then I wrapped that into my prison reform. I did a whole thing on prison reform that said, I know we're really segueing, but really fast, but prisoners coming out of jail, I said, look, one of two things are going to happen. They're going to get right or they're going to go right back in. And so we want them to obviously not assault us when they come out, to not be a leech on society, go on food stamps and welfare, all this kind of stuff, and resort to crime and go back in. And when they go back in, you and I get to pay $24,000 a year for them to sit in that jail cell. I don't want to do that. I want them to come out, I want to get a job. And now rather than a tax taker, they're a tax earner. So I went to my trade buddies, and so we started a re-entry program in prisons. I said, everybody that comes out, I said, I'll take you out of prison 90 days early if you're a drug offender or something like that. If you're a, whatever. No, this is only like non-violent, right, mainly drug offenders. I'll pull you out 90 days early. I'm going to get you in a rehab program that's going to give you a shot. They make this shot now, this medicine, that if you get a shot of it, your brain does not recognize the high when you do drugs. So in other words, if you do heroin and you're on this shot, your brain can't feel it. It's like drinking no duels and trying to get drunk. Like you can't do it, you know what I mean? And so we say, you want to come out? You're going to get this shot if you're a drug offender, right? And we want to make sure you're clean. And then we bring all these jobs, and they are hemorrhaging jobs right now. They're begging people to do trade work because there's nobody doing them. And they show up, and all these hardened prisoners who are tattooed from here to here, that are like this, they told me they cry like babies because when they come out, nobody thought they'd get a second chance. And here you have a legitimate business owner saying, I'm going to hire you right now to be an electrician. And all you have to do, he says, you know what my qualifications are for you? Can you show up to work at 9 a.m.?
Every day.
And can you do it the next day? And as long as you can do that, I will teach you everything you need to know. For these kids, they paid for them. I had 2 people that I knew in prison that came out. I said, you go right in line with everybody else. They got a job, they're electricians. They're making $24, $25 an hour, and they're just going to get promoted. They're building like crazy now. They can make $4 grand for wiring a house. It's unbelievable. But to your point, oh my gosh, there's so much money. So I said, you can go to school for 6, 8 months and start making 50 grand as an electrician. Year 2 or 3, you're probably making 75. Now if you want to go work for APS and be a poll worker or something, you're making 6 figures like that. And meanwhile, 4 years later, this kid's getting out of college with a whole pocket full of debt. Now that doesn't mean college is a bad thing, but what it means is different strokes for different folks. What might work for you don't work for him. So we want absolutely, that's a huge area that we worked on a lot. Yeah.
Okay, here's Phyllis.
Follow up to that. My husband's a 50-year retired 469 pipe fitter, steam fitter, plumber. Have you reached out to the trade unions?
Absolutely. They're the ones that are going to all these meetings. And not only that, whenever I'd speak at groups like this, now the last few years I spoke a lot more because, like Brenda, we had to. Well, we were in office and we wanted to meet people. And now I do a little bit less of it. But everywhere I would go, I would ask the audience, who here knows anybody that wants a job? And I'd say, if you have anybody, neighbor, relative, friend, if you need a job, and I left my cards on the table, I said, call me or text me. But it's in the trades. It's either going to be plumbing, or electrician, because those are the two biggest. You don't need to know what a light bulb is, as long as you have some kind of mechanical skill and can show up to work. And I have the cell phones of the two largest plumbing and electrician companies in Arizona. And I text them every week. Hey, here's 4 more people looking for a job. And they say, send them to me directly. And they'd have their office call them, they'd bring them in. If they showed up, they typically get hired, and that's it. But I would do everything I could to say, whoever needs a job out there, and I ain't talking like a job. $15 an hour, you said this fight, oh, $50 minimum wage. Forget that. How about 50 grand? And how about a trade that you can move to any state in the country and have instant employment? Even if you just offer your services on Craigslist. Hey, I'm a local electrician, fix these ceilings, you know, you can work. And I said, oh my gosh, you can make a ton of money, and you can have a legitimate career and a livelihood. Forget $15 an hour, have a career. And every meeting I go to, I leave my cards there, and if anybody needs a job, I send them right over there.
There's a 250,000 person shortage of welders.
Yeah.
Welders.
Welders
right
make a ton of money. And they say in the next 10 years, half the country's electricians will be retired. You know why? People like your husband, who back 20, 30, 40 years ago, not everybody went to college. You graduated high school, you maybe went into auto, you went to this, you did a trade. Well now, of course, nobody wants to do trade. Oh, I'm not gonna do that work. Huh? And so now nobody does it. Well, now that generation is retiring, so when this ceiling fan breaks in 11 years, you want somebody to come out, it's gonna cost you a lot of money. You know why? There ain't no electricians around. So that's why we were trying to get, I want people hired, I want people doing this. Even if it's paying their way through school, learning the trade. Get them in there, learn it, you can make a lot of money. Yeah.
Okay, Steve. Steve?
Yes.
Do you still have influence now to go back to work with the state education and all that? Because we have a community college here, but it's still a provisional college. It's under Eastern Arizona University. And we went down there, I went down with Sylvia, this has been like 2010, 2012, something like that, trying to get workforce development money, but because we were a provisional, they gave us a pathway to independence, but they wouldn't give us the workforce money.
Yeah.
But, but now we are getting $78,000 a year or something like that. But all we have up here is cosmetology and fire science and, Brenda, what else do we have up here? Not much.
We have classes in nursing.
And the nursing. The big thing is nursing, rural nursing, and stuff like that. But we would love to have welding up here. But we don't have the facility to be able to do that, and that takes money.
So that's something that Eastern could offer, right? I mean, they can offer that training, they can offer those classes. Sylvia obviously is the best person as education chair to do that, but they absolutely could, and that's what we found a lot of community colleges started doing, was come take the courses here. And rather than going to the typical trade school, come here. And they can teach them, they can get certified. We have places like EVIT, all these technical schools where it used to be called JTEDs, that kids in high school can graduate high school with their certification in auto shop and whatever it is in any of these trades and go and start working. And so I would just encourage those in K-12 or high school, try to lock on to one of those JTEDs, those EVIT schools, but certainly your community colleges could and should offer those classes.
We have a foundation in town, Mogollon Health Alliance, Mogollon Health Alliance, MHA Foundation, that gives money to kids for dual enrollment. They have someone that's got a community college master's degree that goes over to the high school in a number of the different classes, and these kids are graduating. One person graduated with her AA at the same night she graduated with her high school diploma. So there's, especially if they want to go into the nursing, if they want to go into the same kind of classes that Gila Community College, or they can go first hour to Gila Community College and take some classes and then come back to the high school. So there's a lot of kids taking advantage of that now here.
And I think what could help all that is if you were able to get control of your own lands. Again, I'll keep going back to Brenda. I know her and Sylvia has worked for years on this. But imagine if we could be in charge of thinning our own forest up here. You could bring back an entire timber industry that we had. You could cut down on wildfires. At the same time, that's where your trade workers could come in, welding all the materials, all that, to get
Welding
everything
the
up and out here.
machinery.
All of that. You could have such an underbelly of industry, and I'll never forget, who was it, the Sierra Club? We were debating this in the Senate, and the Sierra Club shows up and they said, no, we don't want Arizona to thin its own forest. And I said, why? And they referenced the spotted owl.
Oh, of course.
And they said, well, we don't want the spotted owl to get killed off. You cut down all their trees, then they're going to die. And I said, well, let me ask you this. How many spotted owls died in the wildfire? Yeah?
And their nests all.
Yeah.
crispy.
How many more died there? Now, if you were able to actually manage your forest and thin the forest, well, that's less fuel for the fire to consume them. But then think about it, all the groundwater. That those trees aren't sucking up, what, a couple hundred gallons a day each tree. Well, think of all the water resources you can have, but now think of the industry. So not only are we going to save your spotted owl by thinning the forest, we're going to keep them alive more, but now we're going to bring back an entire industry. And it's something for years we fought for, but that's a whole other story.
Okay, is that it? You have
Okay,
some business to do?
I'm going to, with your permission, before my
Absolutely.
wife kills me, I'm going to leave these here. I will leave my business cards that have my cell phone here. If I can help with anything, call me. If you want this program exactly, there's a mom on here, a parent advocate, call her. But I am going to make the drive home now. Unless somebody needs me real fast on the side, I'll be happy to stay and talk with whoever you need. But let me put some of these here. Thank you all so much for inviting me. God bless you all for the work that you do.